Now, in a rare chance to make valuable business connections, you can attend the Intra-African Trade Fair taking place for the whole week from Monday in Durban. You can expect to meet global investors, governments from 55 countries and over 1,000 exhibitors. Now, they'll be addressing issues relating to trade finance, payments, trade facilitation, trade standards, industrialization, and regional value chains to create investment. Joining me to discuss this more, I've got Leila Farah Mokadem, who's from the African Development Bank. She's going to be talking us through some of those events that will be taking place. So what are some of the themes that are going to be addressed at this particular trade fair, Leila?
Good morning, first of all, and the 2021 Intra-African Trade Fair edition is first of all timely and is expecting a sluggish recovery in 2021, and trade and investment and infrastructure challenge that prevail in 2018 still very much prevalent today. So the main themes will be to discuss the power of trade fairs in opening markets and building trade and investment bridges. But we will be also discussing how private sector interest and government interest can be aligned on intra-Africa and trade investment. Of course, also the African Free Trade Continental Agreement, the fourth industrial revolution. We cannot build the intra-African trade without industrialization and without moving to the next steps. And regional integration is critical as well, global value chain and infrastructure. So these are the main themes that will be discussed during this trade fair.
Yeah, and I mean, when it comes to issues around industrialization and innovation, many countries across the African continent have barriers in terms of resources, in terms of developing infrastructure and other similar things. I mean, that is one barrier, but what would you say are some of the other barriers to intra-African trade?
So intra-African trade has a number of barriers, and of course the first barrier is to create the environment and the competitiveness of the private sector to be able to produce and to trade. And the first barrier is, of course, infrastructure, cross-border corridors. The second one is to push the agenda of the Africa Power Pool to be able to have the reliable energy that will support private sector production. But more, as we are moving to the next level in terms of improving and developing intra-African trade, trade facilitation is a critical challenge. So trade, intra-African trade is about cross-border trade, and trade facilitation is important. And we can give the example of the Kazangula Bridge and the cross-border posts that have facilitated trade in an important manner. So the bridge is between Zambia and Botswana. The second maybe issue that we face to push intra-African trade is the value chain. So how to create industries and value chains among the countries so we can have comparative advantage in each of the country and exchange goods and services. What we see also is that digitalization, e-commerce, use of technology is critical and needs to be addressed, and this will bring intra-African trade to another level.
Right, Leila, we are running out of time, but I have to ask you about how you're going to be tackling the issue of COVID-19 and the impact that it's had on trade. We've seen the disruption of supply chains, a lot of value chains being disrupted. How is this particular issue of COVID-19 going to be addressed?
I think the first thing that we can say is that, of course, the pandemic restricted movement of goods and services. It has impacted in particular medium and small enterprises, and they were exposed also because of the limited financial resources and borrowing capacity. So how we are as a multilateral development banks tackle that? First of all, we need to step in and propose innovation in terms of trade finance facilities, and in particular in terms of guarantees that we can provide to the financial sector. This is one. Second, reduce the trade finance gap in terms of financing, but in terms also of building the capacity of the private sector and acting in terms of building also the governance and the ecosystem of the business climate investment. We know that the gap in terms of financing is important. If we take the case of the trade finance gap, it's 91 billion per year, and it's going up after the COVID-19. So the African Development Bank has put in place a trade finance programs and instruments to tackle that in particular.
Very interesting insights there from Leila Farah Mokadem from the African Development Bank, giving us insights into the Intra-Africa trade fair that's going to be happening in Durban this year for the whole week next week, having people from all over the world engaging and creating business solutions for intra-Africa trade.